Welcome, everybody, and thank you for coming to Let's Talk Funding. So today we're going to talk about how to access capital as a small business. We'll go all the way from being a startup to expanding. We're going to leave a lot of time for questions at the end. We don't have a whole bunch of folks on today, so if you've got questions as I'm going through it, just go ahead and take yourself off of mute and go ahead and ask that question. So again, thank you all for coming. My name is Nick Rudolph. I am the Baltimore Regional Director with Maryland Capital Enterprises. I've been with the company for 10 years, and I've been working with small businesses since 2005 when I was working with the Baltimore Main Street program. So this is truly my career, something I really care about, and I'm really excited to be able to provide these resources to you today. A little bit about who we are. We're Maryland Capital Enterprises. We're a CDFI, a community development financial institution. A lot of folks think of us as a nonprofit bank, but we're really much more than that. We offer what's called technical assistance, which is, help to small businesses. It can be in the form of one-on-one consultations, webinars just like this one, conferences, classroom trainings, all kinds of fun things. And it's good to know that, all of these webinars and one-on-ones are absolutely free. We started back in 1998 doing really small loans for the counties on the lower Eastern Shore. We grew, we became an SBA intermediary lender, which we'll talk about in just a second. And in 2012, we crossed over the bridge to the Western Shore. So now we're able to serve the entire Eastern Shore, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Anne Arundel County, Harford County, and Cecil County with all of our services. We are also a women's business center. And what that means is that we're able to offer enhanced services to women-owned businesses, and that's both in our Salisbury and Baltimore offices. You can get a lot more information about us at marylandcapital.org and Women's Business Center at marylandcapitalenterprises.org. So people like to talk to us mostly about the money, and we are an SBA lender, but that does not mean that we do SBA loans. The SBA really only does loans during disasters like the PPP loan and the EIDL loan during the pandemic. What they do is they back loans. So that we're able to give loans to folks that might not be able to get one at a bank, and they will take some of the risk for us. So we get our money from all over the place, federal government, state government, sometimes even local governments, foundations and banks and places like that. And what happens is if you apply for a loan from us and you're approved, we're going to get you into whatever pot of money is going to get you the lowest interest rate in the longest term. And we'll talk about why in a bit. But again, you think about us for money, but really we are so much more than access to capital. We're here to help you, from the ground up. We can help you develop your business plan, develop your cash flows, your marketing plan, all kinds of things like that. So now we're going to get into the Let's Talk funding part. So the thing is, before you want to access money, you really want to have built a strong foundation for your business. So I like to think of a small business as like a skyscraper in downtown Baltimore. You'll see an empty lot in downtown Baltimore with a fence around it and a picture of what the skyscraper is going to look like for a year, 18 months, 2 years, and it looks like nothing is going on. But what's really happening is they're building the foundation. They're doing all the studies, the environmental studies. They're seeing what's underground as far as pipes, so they know what they can be working with. They're building a strong foundation. And once that's done, the building goes up pretty quickly. It gets full pretty quickly, and it's hustling and bustling. Same thing with the business. The more you invest on that foundation of your business, the stronger it's going to be and the better chance of success that you have. So starting your business is going to be a lot of work, but it's also a rewarding experience. And what you're going to need is you're going to need thorough planning, and you're going to need to plan for just about any variable that you can, with an understanding that some other problems are going to go wrong. So you need to be creative. You need to be able to think on your feet, so that when those problems do pop up, you can take care of them. Again, hard work. If you want to start a business because you think working for somebody else is hard, you might want to rethink that, because starting your own business, especially at the beginning, is going to be a whole lot of hard work. And then you need a team. And that A team for you is your bail team. This is a relatively new concept, but what you need is a banker, and you want to develop that relationship early before you ever need money. Go to where you've got your personal account. Ask if they've got a business banker, and if they do, meet with that person. Tell them about what type of business you want to start, where you are at financially, and they are going to be able to help you. They're going to give you good advice. They also may have programs that might be able to help you out, some free accelerator programs, free trainings, free mentors, things like that. And then when you really get to know them, checking in on them, letting them know about your business, when it does come time to apply for that loan, they're going to know you, they're going to care about you, and they're going to be a better advocate for you to help get you that funding. You also need an accountant. As you are growing your business, you're going to be what the folks in the restaurant industry call the weeds. There's going to be lots of stuff going on, and you might miss some filing deadlines with the state and federal government. And what that will do is it'll get you out of good standing with the state, which makes you ineligible for a lot of the services that we and other nonprofits have, and for state contracts and awards. So an accountant is somebody who's going to make sure you don't miss any of those, going to make sure that you're on track, and is going to make sure that your taxes are done right, so that if you are audited, you've got everything you need. Then you need an insurance agent. Again, you want to start talking to these folks well before you're starting the business, and you want to find out exactly what kind of insurance you need and what it's going to cost so you can budget for that. A lot of general liability policies are cheap, $600 to $1,000 a year. But once you start introducing things like working with kids, working with food, transportation, medical stuff, that's going to increase your insurance costs, and you want to know what that is before you get started. Then the last of the bail team is your lawyer. And that doesn't mean you need to have one on staff. It doesn't mean you need to have a retainer, but you want to get to know the small business lawyers in your community, in your area. Let them know who you are so that when you do need help, they've got a little bit of a head start. And what you also want to be doing is saving a little bit of money so that you've got a reserve in case you do need to hire that lawyer. So before we go into some more of the funding, are there any questions about the bail team? All righty. So what I figured is we'll talk about what our loans are first, and then the process to getting those loans. So what we have is pretty normal for CDFIs. We've got small business loans. For us, if you're a startup, which for us means if you've been around for 2 full tax years or less, you can apply for up to 35,000. If you've been around for longer than that, that jumps up to 150,000. The term is going to be based on the size of the loan. A $35,000 loan might be 5 years, whereas anything over 100,000 is likely going to be 10 years. The interest rates are set at 6 to 12%. I will say that most of them are going out in that 7 to 9% range, with most of them right at 8%. This loan does require collateral. And while, of course, fully paid for real estate is the best collateral, we could get flexible with that. So we can use equity in a home. Sometimes we can use automobiles. We can, like I said, use other folks' property if they're willing to put it up. We can be more flexible than most folks think with collateral. If you are using a home as collateral and you are approved for the loan, you will need to get an appraisal that's less than a year old before we can close the loan. Now, these loans are personally guaranteed whether you're a startup or an existing business. And that means that you're going to be putting some risk on the line when you get the loan. And anybody who owns 20% or more of the business is going to have to do this. If you have a large ownership structure, then you're going to need 3 or 4 people if you've got nobody who owns 20%. We do have an application fee, which is $100 plus $25 for each owner who owns 20% or more as a credit report fee. We do a TransUnion soft pull, and we will give you an opportunity to review your credit report. Assuming you're approved, there are closing costs. Generally, a $50,000 loan is going to walk out with just north of $48,000. We're going to be taking the money out of your commercial checking account monthly, and there are no prepayment penalties. However, if you know you can't make a loan payment, you can get in touch with us at least a week ahead of time, and we'll figure something out. Interest only, deferred payment, restructuring the loan. We want to be able to report positive things to the credit bureaus, and we don't want you to miss any payments. During the time that you have the loan, we're going to visit you twice a year in person and or virtually. We're going to want to see your books. We're going to have a couple of questions for you, and we're going to let you know about any resources that we have and any challenges that we see maybe coming down the pike. Now for the big question. Is my business eligible, and what can I use this funding for? So any small business located in our service area is eligible for a loan, except for a few small exceptions. The traditional sin industry, adult bookstores, 100% tobacco, 100% alcohol, things like that, we are unable to lend to. However, we are able to work in both the medical and recreational cannabis industries. Additionally, if you are in real estate investments, we can't purchase your buildings or pay to rehab the buildings. We can do things like build out your office, buy your trucks, and buy your reusable equipment. So, jackhammers, power saws, yes. Drywall and screws, no. But as far as what you can use the money for, any business related expense, that's purchasing furniture and equipment, building out your space, paying your rent, paying your salaries, paying for your marketing, anything like that, unless you are a home-based business. If you are a home-based business, we cannot pay your rent, your mortgage, or your utilities. Our second kind of loan that we have is a credit builder loan. Now, this is for folks who either have no or poor credit, who are just dipping their toes into entrepreneurship. You're really, really good at detailing your friends' cars, and you want to see if maybe it can turn into a business, but you don't want to take out a $35,000 loan. You can buy a little bit of equipment, a little bit of supplies with this, and see how it works. It's also for folks who have an existing business, and because it's a little bit of a faster turnaround, sometimes we can handle emergencies like a tree root growing through a pipe or something like that. The terms are generally going to be 2 years, but for the smaller ones, they can go down to 1. The interest rate is 9%, does not require collateral, and the application fees are lower at $50, and then a closing cost is $75, still having to pay for those credit reports. Everything else is the same there. So those are basically the major loans that we have. Occasionally we'll get funding for other loans. Recently we had one for minority women veteran-owned businesses. And when we have those, we definitely advertise those if you sign up for our newsletter. So now, what are we looking for when we're thinking about funding? So it's good to know that the staff of MCE does not make these decisions. These are made by a loan committee made up of volunteers that are current and retired bankers, other folks in nonprofits with similar missions, and small business owners. So those are the folks that are making the decisions. And what they're looking for is a clearly established business idea through a thorough business plan. They're looking to see that you have experience in the field, or if you don't, that you've got a mentor or a way to get that experience and that education. They're going to want to see your cash flow projections for at least 2 years. And we're going to go into great detail about what those are in just a bit. We're looking at the strength of the collateral and reasonable credit. You will notice here it doesn't have a minimum credit score. What we're really looking for is what you've been doing in the last year or two, looking for missed payments on things like automobiles, mortgages, credit cards, and things like that. There are 2 disqualifiers, however, and that's if you've had a bankruptcy discharge in the last 24 months, or if you have a tax debt without a payment plan. If you have that tax debt without a payment plan, we can work with you with the IRS and the state to get you on that payment plan so that you are eligible for these loans. We're also looking at the general economic conditions for the venture. What does that mean? That means, is this the right place and the right time for this business? Or if you're opening up a pizza shop on a block with 7 different pizza shops on it already, you're going to have to convince us that you're going to be able to survive in that environment. We're also looking for your ability to pay back that loan. Can you get back into the workforce? Because you are still going to owe the money even if your business is not successful. So the documents that we have are similar to a lot of the other CDFIs and honestly similar to what the banks are looking for. So with us, you would fill a form out online to be our client intake form. That's what allows us to start doing all the work for you for free. And it creates the baseline that we start at to develop the plan to help you grow or start your business. Then there's the application. That's where you're going to discuss the business and discuss what you're going to do with the funding and answer a few questions about the disqualifiers and a few other things. On that, you're going to be asked for 3 references. These must be either business, education, or clergy references, and they are going to ask for addresses. You're also going to be asked to upload these supporting documents. Your business plan, your cash flow, personal tax returns for 2 years, and personal bank statements for 3 months are required for every application, no matter how old the business or no matter what kind of loan it is. If your business is existing, we're going to want to see your last 2 years profit and loss statements. If you've been around only for a year, of course, we'll only need to see the one. Your last 2 years of business tax returns, same thing if you've only been around for 1 year. Your most recent quarterly balance sheet and 3 months of corporate bank statements. The other things you can add are things like reference letters. So if you are opening up a salon and you've got a chair in somebody else's salon and you come to us with a stack of 30 letters from clients who say that they're going to move to your salon when you open it, it's going to be really easy for us to get that loan approved. We're also looking for other stuff like things like your resume, if you've got a lease, if you've got estimates or invoices or quotes, contracts coming in, licenses and certifications. If you've already got that website and that social media, we'd love to see that. Were you covered in the news? If you've got a video of that, happy to watch it. Anything that's going to help tell your story and give a more rounded story about your business is going to help you get closer to that yes. Now, there are some grants occasionally available for small businesses. Generally, they're not through organizations like us. But generally, if you've got a green business, if you're working in the health field or with people with disabilities or children, there are occasionally grants. You would be looking at the Department of Commerce, the Department of Education, the Department of Aging in Maryland. If you are, a veteran entrepreneur, a young entrepreneur, women-owned, minority-owned, something like that, there are occasional grants available as well. You just need to be able to keep your eyes out for them. You want to be looking at banks and you want to just search the foundations and see if you can find anything. So before we go into what we're looking for in a business plan and our cash flows, I wanted to see if there were any questions. All right. So what we're looking for in a business plan is really the story of your business or how you're going to grow your business. And who needs that business plan is really anybody who's starting a business or growing a business. It's a living document that you're going to want to change throughout the life of your business, and it's something that's going to ground you and let you know what your plan was, so that if you do get in the weeds, you can go ahead and figure out where you are on that plan and see what that next step is. You're also great for loan and grant applications. They're going to be required for a CDFI or a traditional bank. So you want to make sure you've got it really strong and that you've got a lot of information there, because you're not in the room oftentimes when these decisions are being made. And this document is telling your story for you. So it's also the blueprint for your business. Like I said, it's going to be the document that helps you when you get in the weeds and you need some grounding. You also want to think about it by considering your audience. Like, think of it as a resume. So if you're applying for a grant, you're going to want to focus on all the great things you're doing for the community, how you're hiring from within the community, things like that. However, if you're applying for a loan, the banks love to see that stuff, but really what they're most concerned about is, are you able to pay back that loan? So you really want to think about that when you're writing your business plan. We have a full business plan and cash flow training. There are videos available on YouTube. We're going to be having it in the upcoming months, and it's something that we're happy to do one-on-one with you as well. So what are we and banks looking for in your business plan? Number one is your passion. We want to know what drew you to the business and what drives you to continue. Did you see the way your elderly relatives were taken care of in assisted living homes and you wanted to give the next generation a better experience, and that's what made you want to open an assisted living home? Tell us about that. That's going to show your passion. We're also going to want to know about your expertise. Do you have the education? Do you have the certifications or a mentor to do the jobs that hit the ground running? We also want to know if you've done your research. Do you understand where you fit in the market and if there's room for you in the market? Do you know who your target customer is? Your business may be able to serve everybody, but you want to really drill down and see who you're going to market to. In that salon example, if you're in downtown Baltimore, you might want to focus on something like, African-American women ages 22 to 55 who make $100,000 plus a year. So then you're able to charge more, where you want to do your advertising. And of course, anybody can come sit in your chair. But if you've got that demographic that's going to be coming there all the time, you're going to be able to stay open and thrive. You also want to think about contingency plans. What if you're unable to work for 6 weeks or 6 months? How is that business going to function? And really importantly, something that lots of folks forget to do is we need an ask. So set that expectation from the reader. I often say the way you want to start a business plan, and I like to use my fake business, Nick's Dill Pickles, is something like Nick's Dill Pickles LLC is a wholesaling pickle business operating out of Baltimore, Maryland. Owned by Nick Rudolph, we are seeking for a loan of $15,000 to purchase new pickling equipment so that we can get into more restaurants. If that's your first couple of sentences, the folks who are reading that plan, who are making the decision about whether or not to give you the money, is going to know who you are, what you do, and what you're expecting out of them. It's going to frame the way that they read your business plan because they know the question that they want to answer. And that is, of course, going to get you closer to that yes. The next part of the business plan is the cash flow projections. This is something that sometimes seems daunting, and folks are like, why do we need them? Well, what they're doing is they're showing you the difference between money coming in and profit. So if you've got $5 million coming in a month, but it's costing you 5.5 million to do the work, then you don't have a successful business. And the cash flows are going to help you plan for that and then pivot if you need to in the future. So why do we need them? You need them for loans. You need them as a planning tool. They show you the profit. It's just good governance, and it shows you when you can start taking some serious money out of your small business. So the cash flow document, you'll see it over here on the right-hand side of your screen. It looks like a spreadsheet with 1,000,000 cells in it. Well, the good news is that it's a lot simpler than it looks. And again, something that we're willing to hop on a Zoom with you and do in the course of about an hour. So you need to understand, number one, it's a living document. It's going to change over the course of the business. Not only will it not be 100% accurate, the majority of the cells will be different in reality. You want to be realistic. You want to show that you can do well in the worst case scenario, so that if you're in a best case scenario, you're going to thrive. So you want to make sure you're able to pay your bills, pay your employees, and pay yourself. The next is you want to make sure that you want to break down your income as much as possible. Now, I know some businesses have only one income stream, and that is okay. But if you're able to break down your income and your expenses, it's going to become a more useful document. So if you have a restaurant, you may decide to break it out between dine-in, carry-out, and catering, or maybe food, alcohol, and merchandise. And if you were thinking, I think this is going to be a 70% food and 30% alcohol type establishment, and 6 months in, you realize it's more 60-40, you can use this document and you can decide, is the issue that the food program is weak or that the bar program is strong? And then you can figure out if you want to invest in strengthening that food program or building up that already strong bar program. And having that detailed cash flows is going to help you make that decision with some more variables in it. It's also good to break down your expenses as much as possible. The more lines you have there, the more realistic those numbers are, the more useful this document is going to be for you. You also want to think about, this is going to be showing it broken down monthly. Does your business change month to month? If you're a landscaper, your April is going to be busier than your December, and you want to show that in your cash flows. Also, you want to make sure you're paying yourself enough to, have that house, clothe yourself, feed yourself, and have some money left over for a quality of life. You want to make sure that you're able to have some fun. So when you're starting it, you're going to need a template. Again, we can send you ours, but if you don't like it, there are many, many more around that we're happy to work with. You need to know how much money you have in the bank specifically for the business. You want all your income and expenses broken down. You want to understand what your payroll is. Are you W-9 employees or 1099 contractors? You also want to put the loan and loan payments in as income and expenses. Most folks forget to do that. And then your inventory costs. For every $100 of whatever it is you're selling, how much is the material cost of that? Is it a third? Is it 10%? Is it 50%? It really changes industry to industry. You also want to make sure that there's some common pitfalls that we see. Number one, lots of people start each year at $0 as opposed to taking the income, what's left at the end of year one and putting it in the beginning of year two. So you want to make sure you're not starting off on paper with $0 each year. Taking too much or too little of an owner's draw, like again, you want to make sure you're paying yourself, but not to the point where you're hurting the business. Not having accountants, lawyers, or marketing on there, those are investments. You really need to have those in there. A negative cash flow, what that means is if, starting the business, you probably aren't making a profit to start off. But if you're still losing money after 6, 8, 12 months, you really want to start looking about, how we can make some changes to increase income or lower expenses. Again, forgetting to put that loan and loan payment in, and then also setting unrealistic expectations. We had a person who had a one-person wedding invitation handmade. It was beautiful. And the person said, look, there's 10,000 weddings a year in Maryland. I charge $1,000 a wedding on average. I'm going to make $10 million a year. Well, one person shop isn't doing 10,000 weddings. Not everybody uses invitations. Not everybody's got $1,000 for invitations. So we had that person show us that they could do it on 5 or 10 a month. And then when that worked out, and showed that they could do it well, we were able to get them a loan. And if they do 10,000 after that, well, that's just gravy. They're just doing wonderful. So how does the application process work? So what we do is we accept applications to the first Friday of the month, unless it's something like the first, second, third of the month, in which case we'll extend it to the next Friday. You fill out that client intake form, at which time you're assigned an MCE staff member who's going to work with you as you put together your loan application package. You submit the paperwork online. We do some follow-up with you. We review. We think of any questions the loan committee might ask so that we can put those together. The committee will meet in the last weeks of the month. They'll determine, if you get the loan. Truthfully, the amount of the loan is going to either be what you asked for or it's going to be denied. We don't ever like to partially fund loans. And the reason why is if you need $35,000 to start your business and we approve you for 20, we're setting you up for failure with $20,000 in debt. So back in the day, people used to say, apply for 100,000, they might give you 50. That's not how it works anymore. Apply for exactly what you need. If it's a yes, we're going to issue a commitment letter. And then generally within 2, 3, 4 weeks, we're able to close those loans. Oftentimes that can be done electronically, but sometimes due to collateral and other issues, we do need to get live wet signatures. So before I finish and sort of go through my wrap-up slides, are there any questions?
I do have a question.
Sure.
So in one of the slides in the beginning where you said, what things are eligible for loans, and one of them was a lease for leases for to build out a lease space.
Mm-hmm.
So when a individual applies for a loan, do they have to have the space already?
So while it's not a requirement, generally it's a lot easier to get the loan approved if you've got that space identified. Now, doesn't mean you have to have a signed lease. A letter of intent is usually good. It's something from the landlord saying that, they're holding the space from you until you get funded so that you're not committing to something before you actually get the funding. That can work as well. Oftentimes when we're looking at the existing leases, it's for existing businesses that are already in a leased space. And so we're seeing a lease, halfway through the life of the lease.
Oh, okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All righty. So, where we are in the Baltimore Eastern Shore region of Maryland, there are more small business resources that are free than anywhere else in the country. So you should really take advantage of all of us. We all have different experiences. We all have lived different lives. Ask us all the same questions. Figure out who you're comfortable working with and work with those folks. So some examples are the public library systems. Most of the counties have a small business component. Each county has a local economic development office. Those are going to be the folks that know about local grants if there are any. Join your Chamber of Commerce. Watch the Department of Commerce for the state. Watch the Maryland Small Business Development Center. That's an SBA program that can get you in touch with a mentor to help you develop the business plan, your cash flows, all of that business stuff for free. There's nonprofits like Operation Hope that have all kinds of business education classes. The SBA offers classes all the time, and they've got an office in downtown Baltimore. SCORE is the Senior Corps of Retired Executives. Through them, you might be able to get a dedicated mentor that's worked in your field to help you grow your business. Your universities, whether or not you are an alumnus of them, you should be talking to them. There's lots of reasons. They often have small business centers. They also have classes that are looking for internship possibilities that you might be able to tie into. And then, of course, all of your local business organizations. Join your Main Street, join your downtown partnerships, join your chambers of commerce, become part of that community. So before we finish up, the 5 things that I'd like to put at the end of every presentation. Number one, don't quit your day job. We want to know that you've got income coming in. And as you start the business, you're not going to be making a lot of money. If you can keep that full-time job, you know you can keep yourself above water as you're growing that business. I've said it a few times before, but you absolutely need an accountant. They're going to save your life and keep you in good standing. Like that last slide said, ask for help. We are not competitors in this industry. We're all collaborators. So, we don't mind you talking to other folks and asking the same questions. In fact, we encourage it. Keep your money in the bank when you're looking for capital. When you're applying for that business loan, it's not the time to buy a house or a car or open up new credit cards. Also, no business is an island. People go to small businesses because they're part of your community. And that's really important to them. So you want to make sure you are part of that community. Like I said, join those local groups, give to local charities, make sure that you're participating in local events. And unfortunately, we're living in a pretty politically charged time. So when you're thinking about charities, you really want to keep it not political. Kids, animals, veterans, food banks, things like that. It's the reason why when you walk into a bar, you see sports on, because if they had Fox News or MSNBC on, they'd be instantly turning off half of their clients. And really, unless you're a political business, your clients shouldn't know how you vote. Oh, so with that, I will open it up for any last questions. I always think of my best questions at the end. So if you don't have any more questions, my email is there, nrudolph@marylandcapital.org. Send me an email. We can have a talk. Also, if you'd like our business plan or cash flow template, please email me as well. Were there any questions? Nope. All right. Well, it looks like we got a little extra time this evening. So I hope you can enjoy this beautiful weather, and we'll see you again for more of these. We're putting out about one of these a week, and we'll see you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.